Hello everybody, it's Sarah and welcome to this late night filming session. At least for me, I don't know what time it is for you, but currently is like the last few days have not been amazing for me. I have a few times a year, I get a few days to weeks, depending on how it goes, where I get intense fatigue all the time, which is the last thing that's still left over from my cancer treatment. So yay for that. And the worst is usually around the time when the days start getting shorter, and in summer around the time when the days start getting hotter. So yeah, I've been dealing with a lot of fatigue currently, which is why I have been procrastinating filming for the entire day today, which means it is now 10 p.m. So yeah, that's fun. That is why you get me in a hoodie and low energy, low effort video. But today's video, which I haven't told you yet, is my November TBR, which you could probably tell from the title down below. But today I'm going to tell you my reading plans for November, which seem manageable so far. We have 2 months left in the year. I think I'm definitely gonna reach my reading goal. I mean, I already reached my reading goal 3 times because, you know, I increased the number of books on my Goodreads goal 3 times already. But I'm gonna definitely reach my final goal, I think, because I'm like 20 books off currently now. And so far, aside from July, I have read more than 10 books every single month this year. So I think we're fine. But yeah, so far my TBR looks manageable. I have 12 books on my TBR so far, not yet counting my TBR jars, so we'll get to a total of under 15 books, which is a-okay for me. And this was already a very long intro, so let's start getting into the books I want to read. And we're gonna start with rereads, which I have a few of this month. Also, let me push my hoodie down because it's getting warm under it. But the first reread I want to do is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, which is the first book in the Rook and Rose series. But the reason why I want to reread this, even though this is a release from this year and so I only read it in February, the reason why I want to reread it is because in December we're getting the second book already, which is very exciting for me. I'm so excited for The Liar's Knot, I cannot tell you. And if you know anything about me, you know that I'm not the best when it comes to retaining plot of books. Usually I remember that I loved books, but I don't remember a lot of the plot, especially not the details. I might remember some scenes, but you know, it's just not something I'm good at, okay? So yeah, if I really love the book, I wanna reread it before I read the sequel so I can have everything fresh in my mind. With other books, if I didn't care that much, then I'm like fine with catching whatever was going on while reading the sequel. But with this one, I definitely want to have everything fresh in my mind. Now in this book, we mainly follow Ren, who is a con artist. However, she is tired of being a con artist, and so she tries to pull off her last and biggest con ever, which would mean that she would manage to become part of a noble family and thus never have to worry about money again. Now that's of course just the basic setup of the story. There's a lot of other stuff happening as well. There's children vanishing off of the streets. There's a mysterious vigilante who no one knows who they are. There's a lot of other side plots, but yeah, it's an amazing book. I loved it so much and I cannot wait to reread it already. Next, I have Kushiel's Chosen, which is the second book in the Kushiel's Dart trilogy. The first book I reread in, I think, summer sometime, either July or August, I cannot remember. And I just want to finish my reread of this trilogy before the year is over. In this trilogy, we follow Phaedra, who at the beginning of the first book is a very young child. And she's growing up in the Night Courts, which within this world, they are basically these places that teach and educate courtesans in their art, in their craft, whatever you want to call it. However, Phaedra is a little bit different. She is very special, which is the reason why she is bought by a nobleman and then not only taught in the courtesan craft, but she's also taught a lot about politics, and she is taught how to spy and how to gain information from her customers, a lot of which are nobility. And then this information is used by her master in the political game. So yeah, this is a very, very heavily political series. There is a lot of players in the game, and I'm just excited to finish my reread of the trilogy and then continue on with the series, because there are multiple, I think all of them are trilogies within this universe, I guess you could call it. The next reread is also part of a series that is part of a bigger universe, and that is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, which is the third book in the Stormlight Archive series. This year I have been taking part in the Crab Along, which is a year-long Cosmere read-along, and November is the time to read Oathbringer. Also, I think Dawn Shard, which is the second novella within the Stormlight Archive series. We'll see if I'll get to that. But I will definitely reread Oathbringer. I am marginally excited for it because honestly my Cosmere rereads haven't been doing it that much for me, and Oathbringer is my least favorite of the Stormlight Archive books, so yeah. I'm also not gonna tell you what the series is about because it's an epic high fantasy series that once it's finished is gonna consist of 10 books. So far each book has been over 1,000 pages, and yeah, it's just basically impossible to give a short and concise synopsis, so I'm not even gonna try. And then the last reread I possibly wanna start in November is the Ephemera series by Anne Bishop, starting with Sebastian. I have not reread this series in a while. I have never read it in English. I only got a used copy of the first book recently. I just ordered my used copy of the second book. But yeah, this is also an adult high fantasy series, and I would say of all of Anne Bishop's series, this is the one with the heaviest romance subplot. The setting is this world where intense emotions and feelings and thoughts and wishes can literally influence how the world around you looks. And so you have two characters whose intense feelings change things for them, make them meet, and then while that is happening there's also this being that has escaped that can literally turn nightmares into reality. Like twist nightmares, twist fears, and turn them into like the worst reality possible. So yeah, that's basically what this series is about. It's like a very bare bones synopsis, and it definitely doesn't do it justice, but maybe once I have reread this, I'll be better able to tell you once again what this is about. So next, we're technically going for my TBR jar. I won't pull anything from my physical TBR jar anymore because I only have 2 books left in the jar, so I will just share those 2 books with you. Maybe I'll just read one in November, maybe I'll read both. The first of those 2 books is Contes et légendes du Pays Breton. This is a collection of fairy tales from Brittany, so the northwesternmost part of France, Bretagne. I think it's Brittany in English, right? It's so weird. And yeah, it's basically Celtic fairy tales from France. So I am very excited, and we'll see how much I understand. And then the last book I have left on my physical TBR, I mean not technically the last book, but the last book from my TBR jar, so the last book that I acquired before 2021, before this year, is Paradise Lost by John Milton, but I have a German translation of it, so yeah, we'll see what I think of this as well. I'm sure I don't have to tell you what Paradise Lost is about. It's basically this epic poem about what is said in the title, about losing the paradise, about Lucifer's fall and losing the paradise and so on. So yeah, very excited to finally read this. Next, let's move on to some sequels that I want to get to in November. First, I have The Bronzed Beasts by Roshani Chokshi. This is the 3rd and final book in the Gilded Wolves series. This is a YA urban historical fantasy series set at the end of the 19th century, I believe. The first book was set in Paris, and every single one of the books kind of centers a heist. But ultimately it's about this society that, you know, has some magic, but also has been dealing in colonialism, if you want to put it like that. And we follow one of the heirs of this house who also has, I think, an Algerian mother, I believe, who because of that is denied his legacy as an heir of this house. And so we follow him and his ragtag crew as he tries to win this legacy back through heisting, basically. But yeah, it's an incredible series. I really enjoyed the first two books. There's a lot of historical undertones, a lot of especially undertones and subplots that I enjoy as someone who is very interested in museums and very interested in the discussions around the repatriation and restitution of objects to cultures of origin, objects that have of course been traded, stolen, you know, been acquired generally during colonization of these cultures. And so yeah, it's basically a YA fantasy series that deals with that, so it's right up my alley. Then next I have The Veiled Throne by Ken Liu. This is the third book in the Dandelion Dynasty, which is an adult high fantasy series, a political high fantasy series. And in the first book we follow two characters who basically rebel against this big empire. And these two characters are very different from each other, and that's basically all I can tell you without going into spoilers. But it's an intensely political, philosophical, cultural adult high fantasy series, and it just gives me everything that I want from high fantasy currently. So I really love it. I'm currently reading the second book, enjoying it so much. The third book only comes out in November. So yeah, I'm gonna be ready just in time to jump right into the third book, and I am so excited. I can just highly recommend this series. The last sequel I want to get to in November, although there's a few sequels coming out in November that are part of series that I want to continue, but most of those come out quite at the end of November, so I'm not gonna mention them because I'm not sure if I'll get around to them. But the last sequel, which incidentally also comes out at the end of November, but I'm sure I'll get to this one right away. And that book is Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson, which is the third book in the Skyward series. I'm also currently reading the novellas that Brandon Sanderson is publishing just before the release of Cytonic. There will be two left that I'll probably read in November, but I forgot the names of the two of them, so we're not gonna mention them. We're not gonna mention the novellas I read. It's fine. It's okay. I'm just gonna mention them in my wrap-up. But anyway, Skyward is Brandon Sanderson's YA space opera, and in this one we follow Spencer, whose biggest dream is to become a fighter pilot because basically the humans have been stranded on this planet and they are constantly attacked by the Krell, which is a race of aliens. Spencer wants to become a fighter pilot, however she is not allowed to become one, or she is given obstacles. Obstacles are put in her way to become a fighter pilot. The reason for that is Spencer's father, who used to be a fighter pilot, defected during a crucial fight and was then branded a coward. Because of that, Spencer's entire family has also been branded cowards, and because of that they don't want to allow her into the fight academy. But Spencer won't let that stop her from flying. So I've been waiting for 2 years for the sequel. I am very excited. As soon as I have it in my hands, I'm gonna start it, because the ending of the second book was a big fucking cliffhanger and I cannot wait to see how it continues on. Since we're already at the topic for sequels, let's look into my TBR jar, my series TBR jar, to see which series I'm going to continue in November. I am pulling one series per month from this TBR jar, and that is the series that I continue / finish within that month. So let's see which one I have right here. Funny that I should pull it. The Empire trilogy by Jenny Wirtz and also Raymond E. Feist. Funny that I should pull it because the sequel already was on my TBR for November anyway. This is Servant of the Empire, the second book in the Empire trilogy by Jenny Wirtz and Raymond E. Feist. However, as I mention every time I talk about this series, I believe Raymond E. Feist's name is only on this because it's set in his world, basically, in a world that he created. But within the first book, we follow, I think Mara. We follow Mara, who is a young heiress, a young daughter to this noble house. When her father and brother die in a war, she has to take over as the lady of her house, and she has to deal with political intrigue and getting rid of her enemies in very creative ways. Absolutely love the first book, cannot wait to jump into the second book. Next book I want to talk about is When the Tiger Comes Down the Mountain by Nivo. This is the buddy read for November for my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries. We'll read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman or genderqueer person per month. And I won't tell you too much about this because this is a novella and I don't know anything about this actually, but I did read the first novella in this series earlier this year, also for my book club, so I am very excited to jump into the second one. Although if you want to join us, you don't have to have read the first book or the first novella according to the author. You can just read this as a standalone as well. And so yeah, if you're interested in joining us, the Discord will be linked down below, of course, and the Twitter as well. So you're very welcome to join us. Last book to mention that I don't have here physically before we jump to two very last books, and that is Lost in the Netherwoods by Aidan Thomas. This, I believe, is a YA dark Peter Pan retelling, if I remember correctly, but honestly I don't remember anything anymore from the summary aside from that. The reason why I'm reading this now is because one, it was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. I really enjoyed Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas last year, so I just wanted to read this one this year as well, and it's a buddy read that I'm doing with a few friends. Before we get to the final book of this TBR, because it's already getting really long, let's look into my general TBR jar. This TBR jar holds the entirety of my Goodreads TBR, at least the entirety of my Goodreads TBR from the beginning of the year. And it's just a way to remind myself to look at those books regularly and to maybe read one of them. So I had to look up the book on Goodreads very quickly because I didn't remember which one it was, but it's Thorn of the Night Blossoms by J.C. Kung, and I think this is a Chinese-inspired, possibly self-pub fantasy series. There's LGBT, it's an adult fantasy series. I'm not quite sure. I think the main reason why I put this in here and on my Goodreads TBR is because the covers are absolutely gorgeous. Like, just look at this. But yeah, very excited for this. So let's see how I feel about it once I get it, if I get to it. And then the last book I have for this TBR is A Hero Born by Jin Young. This is a fantasy series translated from Chinese. It's historical fantasy. I believe it's wuxia fantasy. I don't know how to pronounce this name, I'm sorry, but I'm reading this for my international fantasy video. I don't know what this is about, aside from the fact that it is historical fantasy and it's set in 1200 AD. So yeah, very excited for this. And now I gotta wrap this video up very quickly because my battery is blinking. So if you have any thoughts on any of the books I just mentioned, if you want to buddy read any of them, comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media, as well as I said, to my book club, are linked down below in the description box, so definitely go and check them out. And I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!